Hi everyone, Andrea Spencer here, Artist in Res for the Northern Health and Social Care Trust. Today I'm going to guide you through the process of creating a themed watercoloured painted wreath. We'll be using stencils to help you compose a design. You can download the stencil on the link below this video. You will need watercolour paints, a paintbrush, I'm using a flat number 10 and also a round number 4, 300 grams watercolour paper pad, a jar for water, a pencil, eraser, scissors and a circle template around 20 centimeters diameter. I used a side plate from my kitchen. You'll need a good space to do your painting, somewhere you can be messy and not worry about getting paint on the floor. A kitchen table beside a window is a good place, somewhere where you can lay out all your materials and not be disturbed. Download the stencil from the link below and print it onto card if you can. This will make it easier to draw around when it's cut out. You'll need to cut out the designs from the template. You don't need to be really precise. The stencils will just give you a rough idea of the shapes and where to place them. So cut out the stencils you want to use. For the example that I'm going to paint in this video, I just used 3 stencils. The elongated leaf design, the pine bough and the 3 rosehip berries. Cut around them the best you can. If you accidentally cut bits off, just sellotape them back together again. Next, get your watercolour pad at the ready. It's best to use good quality paper so as the paper doesn't buckle when you put the watery paint on it. I'm using 300 grams weight paper with a rough texture. And although I don't show it here in the video, it's a good idea to tear out a sheet of paper to use before you start. Take your 20 centimeters diameter circular template and draw around that. This will give you a guide to follow to keep your design circular. Next, start to place your stencil around the circle and draw around those stencils. Draw lightly, as you don't want the pencil marks to show through too much at the end. Take your time and consider where you place the stencil. Leave room for other elements you want to include, such as the pine bough stencil and the berries. Remember, you can turn the stencil over and draw around it that way to add variation. I think these wreath designs work well when you do a repeat pattern, alternating leaf designs. I'm using the mistletoe here, but I'll abandon that and then create a new design using the 3 stencils that I mentioned before. You can see that I do flip the leaf stencil over in order to give variety to the pattern. Now it's time to start mixing the colours to paint the elements of your design. You'll get better results if you practice mixing colours first. Look at the different shades in these photos in nature, or better still, collect your own leaves and see if you can use combinations from your paint box to mix some of the colour variations. Here are the colour samples I created on a separate sheet of paper before painting in the wreath. I mixed the paints to get the colours I wanted and then recorded what colour combinations I use so as I could easily reproduce them. You'll need to mix your paints with water to make up a supply of the colour you want to use. A good tip is to use a mister and squirt your watercolour paints down with water in advance. This softens the paint pans, making them easier to use. Use the palette, which is the lid of your paint tin, to mix your colours, or use a white plate. It's trial and error to see how much water to paint ratio you need to get the effect you want. I often start off quite washy and then come back and strengthen the colour with a second application of paint. In this video you will see that I'm using a flat brush to paint the leaves. I'm using the brush on its thin side rather than the wide side. And I'm applying pressure and then lifting up the brush to try to use the brush to create the leaf shape in one go. It takes a bit of practice, but you can see I do get better as I go. You'll notice I use kitchen paper towel to lift out a spot of paint from a leaf. This is because I have planned to have a red berry there and I don't want the green paint to influence the red I paint on top. So the kitchen towel lifts the paint out and takes it back to the white paper. I'm not worried about painting right up to the pencil lines. I'm just using those pencil lines as a rough guide, and I'll rub away any pencil lines that still show once I have finished the whole thing and the paint is completely dry. For the pine bough, I mix up a more blue-green colour. And again, I use the very edge of the brush, making quick flicking marks to represent the thin pine needles. And I come back afterwards and add a bit more darker paint to create depth. Then I paint in the berries using a mix of red and crimson. I notice the berries have little dark terminals at one end, so I add those in, and also a darker colour for the stalks. You can see the mixes on my palette, the colour mixes on my palette. You can see that I added a dark blue to the red to make a darker shade. I have not used the black paint in this painting at all, and the technique of watercolour is to use the white of the paper to add light rather than the white paint. So here's my finished painting, and then at the end here I've put some images together of other wreath designs I found which may give you some inspiration. Also, I think these wreaths don't have to be just Christmas themed. You could use this idea to paint other wreaths at different times of the year using different imagery, such as meadow flowers or spring flowers, snowdrops. Really, it's just up to you and your imagination. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, and maybe it gives you a bit of an idea into watercolor painting. Just give it a go and enjoy the process.